Let's welcome on our guest line Congressman Massie, who, as I reported earlier, reached out to us. And I'm very, very grateful, Congressman, for your willingness to come on the show and join us here on the Mike Gallagher Show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
My pleasure. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me first say this resolution by the Democrats was political. It was poorly timed. It was insincere, and it was badly drafted. But
so why'd you vote for it?
Because in 2014, I voted for a resolution when Obama was president prohibiting him from deploying or maintaining forces in Iraq without another authorization. I voted on the same thing when Obama was president in 2015. In 2013, I wrote my own bill, and it was much stronger than the Democrat bill, that was called the War Powers Protection Act, to keep Obama from getting us into a war in Syria. So I've had a history of doing this. I'm on a resolution before any of this transpired. It wasn't political. With Andy Levin, Democrat from Michigan, to clarify that the Iraq AOMF doesn't authorize a war against Iran. We haven't gotten that passed yet. But I'm just telling you that even though the Democrats are insincere and inconsistent, that doesn't mean I should be insincere or inconsistent. And just one quick other thing, and then I'll take whatever you want to throw at me.
Sure.
Matt Gaetz did a great job of getting the Democrats to take out any mention of Soleimani's attack and any criticism of Trump. So there were two of us three, as you said.
Three.
But what we got them to take out the criticism of Trump or trying to litigate Soleimani. And a lot of people think this was about Soleimani. And I spoke to the president myself. And I told him that I haven't criticized him, and I won't criticize him for attacking Soleimani.
Right.
And that's a little bit subtle difference between myself and my Senator Rand Paul, who was a great friend of mine and I respect.
But when you spoke to the president, was he disappointed in your vote?
Well, you know what? He was disappointed, but he wasn't surprised because he knows where I come from. He had talked to other individuals before he talked to me about my position on this, and I think he knew I'm pretty firm on trying to keep us from going to another war. He made a good case for why, if he had more power, that he could prevent a war. I thanked him for not getting us into another war. He's the first president in the last 4 or 5 presidents that hasn't gotten us into a war. I reminded him of that. I thanked him for it. And his feeling is that if he has more power, not less, that he can project that power to keep us out of a war. And I think it's a reasonable argument if you trust Trump, and I do trust him. But the problem is once you give that to one president, the next president has it.
But it's got to be difficult for you. And incidentally, I do want to add here that lots of listeners in Kentucky, in your district, who we've heard from, who say you have a solid, and I know you have a solid conservative record. You've been a very effective legislator. You have been supportive of President Trump. And as I said a couple of times today, I think it speaks well of you and your team that you guys reached out to us and said, hey, let's let the congressman come on Mike's show and explain it. So all of that I'm appreciative of. It has to be, having said that, it has to be difficult for you, though, to hear Democrats and Trump opponents say, hey, look, the president doesn't even have the support of people like Matt Gaetz or Thomas Massie. He's got Republicans. The foundation is cracking. Look, they're turning on the president. You can't be unaware of those comments, and that has to be difficult for you.
It does make it difficult. I got the Democrats to yield me 1 minute of time to give a floor speech on this, and I took great delight in reminding everybody in my floor speech, which is only a minute long if you want to go find it. I said, I voted for Trump, and I'm going to vote for him again. And I reminded the Democrats of that. And I looked over on their side when I said it. But I said, but look, if we go to war, that we owe it to the troops to give them a clear definition, and they need to know they have the support of the people, that they're not going to get the rug pulled out from under them with funding or something later on. And the way you do that is you have a vote in Congress.
And yet politically, Congressman, it's not helpful, as you know. We're in an election fight of many believe of our nation's life. I mean, we've got so much on the line, so much at stake. And this president is up against so much as it is. He has so many obstacles. The whole veritable machine is against him. We all see that. And so to have a trio of Republican congressmen vote with the Democrats on this, it was non-binding. It didn't mean anything. So all it ultimately did was give the Democrats a talking point that there is some fissures within the Republican Party. And now I'm sure you've heard the news, and The Hill is reporting as many as 10 Republican senators are considering doing what you did and sort of buck the president on this resolution. You got Tim Kaine circulating this resolution that would direct Trump to remove U.S. forces from any hostilities against Iran within 30 days. You've got Mike Lee, Rand Paul. Of course, you got the usual anti-Trump folks like Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. But perhaps your vote helped pave the way for these Republicans in the Senate to waver and not support the president.
Most of the senators ignore everything we do in the House, so I'm not sure about that. But I do want to reemphasize a point that you said. Look, I am a co-chair of Trump's reelect campaign in Kentucky. I was a delegate for him at the last convention, and I hope to be selected as a delegate for him by my party in Kentucky, and I think I will, for him in this next convention. I support him 100%. It's not about this president. But I completely understand what you say. It really hurt me to stay the path on this one because I knew how insincere the Democrats were. I knew they turned a blind eye to when Obama did this, when Obama wanted to take power away, they could care less. Now, there's an exception. There are 10 of them, I would say, you can count them on both hands, who were willing to speak out against President Barack Obama. You had Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, and folks like that who, like me, have always been against the next war already if we could prevent one. But I understand President's commander-in-chief. I support him when he defends our troops. And I'm not litigating, unlike some of the other Republicans in the Senate there, whether he had the authority or not to strike Soleimani. I'm going to say, hey, as long as there's an Iraq AUMF and we've got troops deployed there by an authorization of Congress, that defending them against imminent threat is an important thing to do. We have to do that. As the commander-in-chief has the right and responsibility.
There are going to be windows where the commander-in-chief, receives intelligence and to reach out to Congress. And you've heard the arguments, you've heard his position, and you've heard what the pushback is. You think he's supposed to consult with Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi? My goodness, they'll leak it to the New York Times in 5 seconds flat.
Oh, I agree with you, and I'm not, and I am 100% in agreement with you, and I'm not litigating that. They do have an obligation, though, because every member of Congress has top secret clearance, top secret. They do have an obligation to come and share that, at least with some of the committees. Maybe if you shared it with some of these folks here, it would go everywhere. But I think after they do the attack, if the Democrats were sincere, let me tell you what they would do, Mike. They would do what the majority of the American people want to do, which President Trump wants to do. I talked to him about this, which is to draw down our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan and eventually get the hell out of the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And a majority of veterans feel that way, too, when you poll them.
It's a very important conversation we ought to be having, and I'm glad we're having it. Congressman Thomas Massie is our guest representing Kentucky's 4th Congressional District. Congressman, can you share with us by percentage what kind of response you've gotten to your vote from your constituents?
Well, I'd say it's much like President Trump's response. Nobody was surprised because I have an 8-year track record of being consistent on this. I have taken some heat from it. My goal, though, and I said this in my speech, there's going to be twice that I am judged and taken account for what I do on the floor of Congress. One of those times is in my reelection. The other time is when I draw my last breath of air. And when I draw my last breath of air and I'm judged for what I do here, I hope to be able to say that I did everything I could to keep us out of another endless war where thousands of our men and women die without a clear, defined purpose and without a promise to bring them home.
I wonder, and I almost worry about the way I'm focused on 2020. And listen, I never want to challenge somebody who takes a principled position, but another principle is we got to win in 2020. If the Democrats take control in 2020, there is no telling what's going to happen with our adversaries worldwide. There's no telling what could happen domestically. And it just seems to me that to fail to exhibit unity with the president in a crucial year like this is very counterproductive, and it sort of jeopardizes the chance for Republicans to regain control of the House, maintain control of the Senate, and hold the presidency.
Well, I agree with you. This next election is a big one, and for instance, if we lose the Senate, they're gonna probably do away with the 60-vote rule, and they will run roughshod. They'll have mandatory voting. They'll have automatic voter registration. There will be more voter fraud, and we may never be able to prevail again under the as Republicans under the two parties as we know them. So that's critically important. But I don't think that this issue would be pivotal in the Senate or in the House, because if you're talking about general elections, the majority of the population doesn't want another war. Now, as far as the president's election, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm co-chair. I'm going to be a delegate. I'm going to vote for him. I'm going to proudly say that. But you know what? You've been very kind and fair to me. You've been reserved.
Well, no, but I admire your track record, and I admire Congressman Gates, and I don't we can disagree, and we do. I disagree with you on this vote, but I do appreciate your willingness to come on the show and explain your vote and explain it to our audience. Listen, dialogue and debate is healthy, and I'm just, like I said, I'm just fixated. We got to get it right in November of 2020, and I truly believe we've got to be unified, and we have to be loyal and supportive of this president. And again, just because we disagree with this vote doesn't mean I disagree with your legislative accomplishments and your service. And again, I appreciate you very much reaching out to us to come on the show, Congressman Massie. That speaks well of you, and I'm glad you did that.
I'll tell you, I'm on the oversight committee with Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows. We were down in the SCIF working together, defending the president when Adam Schiff was trying to keep all this stuff secret. We call those the witness tryouts. Anyways, I'll fight for him on the oversight committee. I'll defend his cabinet, and I'll defend him, and I'll work for him in the next election.
Thank you, Congressman, for joining us. Again, I appreciate you very, very much. Thanks.
Thank you,
All the best. Congressman Thomas Massie from Kentucky. What do you think?